All right, so we're going to switch gears here now and talk a little bit about the overall mechanism of environmental toxicity and autoimmune disease. Studies, as I mentioned before, have shown that environmental risk factors may account for 40 to 70% of all autoimmune disease. So which group of toxicants is the leading risk factor for the development of autoimmune disease? The answer is air pollution, which causes and exacerbates a number of diseases. The classic picture of immunotoxicity, that is toxicity that affects the immune system, but from environmental toxicant exposure, is reduced cell-mediated immunity leading to chronic infections, which is a reduced Th1 activity, allergies and asthma, which is increased Th2 function, and autoimmunity, which is overreactive Th2 or Th17 activity, as I mentioned before. This is interesting, but often the first signs of environmentally induced immune toxicity are asthma and allergies. So it is very important that we ask our patients about these things. We do a good review of systems with our patients. We include an environmental toxicology questionnaire on our new patient intake forms so that we can get this information. Because patients oftentimes won't tell you that where they live or what kind of water they drink or the fact that they have dental amalgams or whatever it may be. All of these things are potential causes, and it's important to understand the progression of things. So it's why timelining is even more important, to understand, hey, when did this asthma develop? This is new onset asthma. You've never had it before, and now you have it all of a sudden. That's a red flag as a potential sign of this immunotoxicity going on. So it's really important that we ask our patients about these types of things. Okay, so this is a very interesting looking flow chart, and I'll try to explain it in the best way possible. But essentially, again, we have these T helper cells. These are naive Th cells that, again, are going to differentiate into either Th1 or Th2 cells. If we have toxicants that disrupt our immune system and deplete glutathione levels, which we're going to talk about next, and boost Th2 levels, things like DEP, tobacco smoke, PFAS, these are our fluorinated compounds that have been now named forever chemicals. They never disintegrate in the environment, and they're there forever. So a lot of these things are found in our Teflon pans and all of our nonstick stuff. Phthalates, which are found it's a type of plastic, right? Triclosan, TCE, xylene, toluene, some of these solvents, lead, mercury, and pesticides. All of these things are known to deplete glutathione levels and boost Th2 levels. So now we're going down this way. The Th2 levels in a big way, you can see this large arrow. The Th2 levels, Th2 cells, when there's a dominance of these things, they produce a lot of cytokines, inflammatory cytokines, interleukin 4, 5, 6, and 10, right? That leads to eosinophils becoming activated and causing this allergic reactivity, things like asthma and atopic dermatitis, right? So we have to be looking out for those things. Then up here, we've got originally what is supposed to happen here is that interferon over here is supposed to cause our killer T cells to act and have cell-mediated immunity. But if we don't, then we have this blockade here, and then we've got chronic infections going on. Then our B cells become activated, right? Then they differentiate, and they also cause allergic reactivity, and they also cause autoimmunity down the line when they're autoreactive, right? Now they're reacting to our own tissue. So the whole point of this slide is really to talk about the fact that these toxicants are known to deplete glutathione levels and boost and cause this Th2 dominance. And so it's important to understand if your patients have the beginning stages of atopic dermatitis or new onset asthma, because some of these things are signs that something is going on. Okay, so air pollution is a big deal, right? So according to the World Health Organization, air pollution kills an estimated 7 million people worldwide every year. It's probably an underestimation, direct link to deaths. And data also shows that almost all of the global population, 99%, breathes air that exceeds the WHO guideline limits containing high levels of pollutants. And unfortunately, the low and middle income countries suffer from the highest exposures, usually is how it happens. And so those are the people that are most often affected by these air pollutants. Air pollution has been shown many times over in the research to cause or increase the risk for diseases, including heart disease, stroke, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, lung cancer, Even things like fatty liver disease, it's now being linked to as well. So it's quite interesting. It's been shown that exposure to air pollution can elevate both the incidence and severity of autoimmune diseases as well, and particularly rheumatoid arthritis, connective tissue, and inflammatory bowel diseases. Very interesting that air pollution causes gut problems. The main sources of air pollution include industry and vehicle exhaust, forest fires, stationary fuel burners, and solid fuel combustion. They include particulate matter, PM, and a mixture of gases, carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, ozone, and sulfur dioxide. For a long time, ozone was the bad guy, right? The main bad guy. But I don't think we gave enough attention to particulate matter, which is now being linked to a whole slew of chronic diseases and really needs to be studied even more, in my opinion. So we have different types of particulate matter. We have PM10. This is our coarse particles. This is our large PM, as we call it. Typically occurs from road and agricultural dust, tire wear emissions, construction, demolition works, or the mining operations as well. It also occurs because of wildfires and windblown dust. These are another source of PM10. So if you are in an area like California, for example, or Oregon or the Great Northwest, there's been a lot of forest fires, and climate change is absolutely contributing to these things. And therefore, people are suffering the consequences from an air pollution perspective. And then we have our PM 2.5. This is, again, mainly from traffic and industry, and also from oil refineries or brake emissions from cars as well. And they are considered as the main culprit of the adverse cardiovascular effects of air pollution on human health. There's been studies looking at people's acute exposure to these types of things and the risk of stroke and heart attack. So people living in areas where the air pollution is really bad, they oftentimes have more risk, more incidence of heart attack and stroke. People who spend long hours driving in traffic oftentimes have higher risk as well. So these are things that do need to be studied more. And then we have our ultrafine particles, UFPs. These are primarily from tailpipe emissions and from mobile sources. These are kind of the most dangerous because they're very small, and they can travel anywhere in your body because they're so small. So PM10 particles typically get stuck in your upper airways, which is, I guess, good, but not so good at the same time. PM 2.5s and the UFPs are easier to reach the smallest airways and the alveoli in the lungs. And these UFPs, again, can further penetrate the capillary membrane. They can hop right in the bloodstream and then spread into the systemic circulation. And what has been shown is these particles can be found in remote organs as well. And this could also induce specific organ toxic effects because they're able to travel anywhere. So it's important to understand these different types of things. And I would always, recommend that people, as you're working with your patients from an integrated perspective, understand where they live, especially if you're working with people from out of state or around the world. It's important to understand where they live so you can get an idea of what their air quality looks like on a daily basis. And there's many different air quality indices out there on the internet, so you can just Google that. So it's not completely clear how air pollution causes autoimmunity, but it has been postulated that air pollutants cause systemic inflammation, increased oxidative stress, which always, of course, is going to potentially lead to disease. And then it also modifies us from an epigenetic perspective, and then, of course, causes issues with our immune system as well. And this is all caused by airway damage. So the lung may actually be an autoimmunity initiation site in autoimmune disease. This is kind of something that we don't always think about. So air pollutants can bind to this aryl hydrocarbon receptor, AHR, and it can regulate Th17 and Treg cells. And then oxidative stress and inducible bronchus-associated lymphoid tissue. This is kind of like our GALT. We have BALT as well. Caused by the pollutants can influence our T cells and B cells, resulting in the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines, again, causing systemic inflammation. And then the cytokines can also stimulate B cells and dendritic cells, resulting in a lot of antibody production and self-reactive or autoreactive T lymphocytes. So I'm not going to talk about this entire pathway because we've kind of have gone over this already. But here we have our air pollution that perforates through the epithelium and the BALT, right? The bronchus-associated lymphoid tissue. And then eventually it's going to cause this oxidative stress here, causes an imbalance of our Th1 and Th2 cells, which can directly down the line cause autoimmunity, right? So down here, we end up developing B cells and antibodies, and those antibodies are directly against our own tissue. It can also cause pulmonary inflammation down here and systemic inflammation, causing as we mentioned before, the increase in Th17 cells, which have been shown to be linked to inflammation and autoimmunity, and a decrease in our Treg cells, which then causes this imbalance between our Th1s and Th2s, and that causes autoimmunity as well. So the lungs are a jumping off point for systemic inflammation, oxidative stress, and this immune system dysregulation that can cause autoimmunity, unfortunately.